Welcome to Forge and Anvil. I'm Alan Rogers. We're coming to you today from the Atlanta Renaissance Festival and Starfire Forge. They make all sorts of weapons here, including axes, swords of all variety, and daggers as well. Now these were all made by forging down bars of steel. And in the 16th century there would have been a lot of different methods of making weapons, including Damascus steel as well, where you fold it and weld it. But as I say, these were forged down, and we've been lucky enough to persuade the people here at Starfire Forge to show us how to do this. So let's go talk to Robert and see how to make a sword. Well, hi, Robert. How are you doing?
Oh, Alan. Welcome to the 16th century.
Thank you. I'm quite at home here. So you're going to show us how to make a sword blade out of a bar of steel.
Basically, yes.
Okay. Well, how do you get started?
Well, first of all, you acquire your steel.
Right.
And during this time, steel was basically produced, smelted out of iron ore, that kind of stuff. And then the particular smiths would take the steel, usually cast in a bar form, this type shape. And then the swordsmiths would then take this shape, heat it up to the proper temperature, with a hammer and the anvil then would then shape it into the blade that they required.
Ah. So it requires a whole lot of hand work and basically drawing down the steel.
Yes, it does.
And thinning it out. I noticed you're using charcoal. Was that common during the time? Did they?
That's what they primarily used.
Right.
Coal was not discovered until hundreds of years later.
Right.
You usually think of coal fires at the blacksmith shop, but no, it was basically wood, charcoal, peat, whatever was available. And indeed, that's why there are no trees in the Middle East now. It's because they were all used for the forge.
Well, where would they get their steel? Was it common for a blacksmith to make his own steel?
Some of them, but primarily there were many different countries, like England, various other places where iron was in abundance, that it was mined from the land and then shipped to the basic places. Like there was very little iron in the Middle East, so they had to acquire it from elsewhere through trade.
Right. So you had kind of warehousing systems and all that
Exactly,
even then.
yes.
People don't realize that pre-industrial trade networks, like between England and France, the wine and the steel.
It was very important and very common.
Right, right. It was an international community back then.
Yes.
Now, you've got this done in certain stages, and you bring the first one to a certain shape, and then where do you carry it? You thin it down and
Exactly. You take, as I said, the raw bar and shape it. Primarily, you want the blade shape, and of course, as you've shown earlier, there are many different type blades. The blade I am working on now is going to end up being a one-hand broadsword.
Ah, okay, okay.
And this type of weapon, of course, was very popular with the knights. It was light enough to carry on their side. It would be the weapon you would use in one hand with a shield, probably on the other.
Right.
Strictly an offensive, hacking, slashing weapon.
You didn't kill with the point back then so much as
Well, you
the
killed with whatever you could, actually.
a rock. It doesn't matter, your horse. Yeah.
But since you can't cut steel, can't cut armor, they were not so much concerned with the edges being that sharp. Though you would want at least one sharp blade on your person for the finale of it, so to speak.
In the whole thing.
So basically, I think we've got this to a proper temperature.
Oh, great. Let's see some pounding here.
And what we're doing, we're trying for a good evenness along the edge, trying to be as uniform as possible. Because that is the part of the sword which absorbs the initial impact. So you want as much strength there as possible.
Do you find that when you work one side like that, the metal has a tendency to curve?
Oh, yes.
How do you counter that?
Well, you immediately flip it over and start hammering
Push
the
it
other
on the
way.
other side.
Exactly. It's a constant back and forth, back and forth.
Right. That's something that always defeated me when I was trying to teach myself how to do blades. Because there was just, if you didn't correct it constantly, you ended up with a scimitar, basically.
Well, I suspect that's how the curved blade evolved.
Right.
It was from ignorance. Yeah.
What about trademarks? I mean, are there common trademarks we can find today where we can identify smiths that worked?
Usually, particularly if a smith was good enough and his work was sought after, he naturally put his mark on it. And you can find them throughout Europe because of the extensive trade. A swordsmith, once it became known that he was able to fashion a good, workable, usable sword, his talents were sought out. You know.
We had a chance to see some examples of this craftsmanship on a visit to the armor collection at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. Blacksmith and author Jack Andrews gave us a tour and told us something about the armorer's craft. The sword we're making for our project today was used to hack people and to slash them, and smiths developed a way to stop this from happening. Armor. The earliest efforts at armor were leather jerkins with steel rings sewn onto them to stop it from happening. And then chainmail was developed, which really links all these chains together. We're at the Philadelphia Museum of Art to see one of the best collections in America, and to help us through that collection is Jack Andrews. Welcome to the program, Jack.
Thank you, Alan.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Tell us something about how this would have been made.
Well, aptly named chainmail because it's made just like chain, where you'd take small pieces of iron and you'd loop them around and you'd weld them in the fire. Then succeeding pieces are looped in that loop and then welded together. In the case here, we have small rings about 1/4 of an inch in diameter that are looped around and individually fire welded. And then each of those are locked around the others. There's 4 pieces that they're linking together. And that's done hundreds and hundreds of times just to make this sleeve.
Really? There must be thousands of welds in here.
Easily thousands,
Thousands
yes.
of welds. And we're wearing these white gloves because this is a reproduction, and the museum staff wants you to protect their pieces that keeps them from corroding from body oil. The next logical step after this, of course, was plate steel, like the pieces we have here, and plate armor. And they have some really good examples of that in the next gallery. Let's go take a look. Here we have an excellent example of some very simple plate armor. Tell me, Jack, how would this have been made?
Well, I would imagine this piece flattened out. I think you begin to see the pattern of iron that they would start with. The craftsman would start from the back side. And in the process, they would back this up against a piece of wood or something like this. In this area, they could work cold because it's a very shallow type of bend. As you begin to get down here into the very deep part, it'd have to be worked hot because the metal actually has to move. And that's done with long hammers with a soft round nose on the peen that we call armor hammers. And they would hammer that into the sink of wood or a die like that. Then the part is turned over, hammered from the other side, and the shape generally beginning to form. The edge is made, creased and turned over. You go around, you turn it back and forth, reprise on the back side and the chasing on the other side. Then, as this is developed here, you can see the hammer marks, how the metal is moved. Turned over, and the final step of the chasing done, where you'd be working against a lead block or a pitch compound, and you work with chasing tools with various degrees of sharpness on the points, or the flats, and the faces. And that would be hammered in lightly with a hammer, and this edge gradually developed around here.
And then they would put these incised marks along here? And
well, first, yes, that's right. However, it's rolled over first, and that's called hemming, to double it up, and, of course, to make a softer edge so you don't cut yourself on it. Then the decoration made on that. The other decorative element, which is very nice, are these rivets. Very nicely oval pointed with a wonderful little brass flowered rivet behind it.
And these were simply decorative, but the rivets up here held the strap to hold the piece of armor on. Now, you had called this chasing. When people, many times I've seen armor with gold or brass inlays in them, and people refer to that as chasing. Is there a difference between that and this?
Basically the same process, because you're hammering from the front. Imagine a line, a chased line. You would chisel a line in there, you would engrave a line in there. And then, because that's a raised edge, you would lay a piece of copper, brass, or gold in there, and then hammer that down. The edges grab the piece and it's held in there, and that could then be polished out.
Now, this piece would have been polished, needless to say, to a very bright shine. How did they do that? Did they use stones, or did they use...
They used stones and files to develop the surface, and then later would come in with finer grades of polish, rouge, and to polish. When you start out with a piece of iron, as you know, in the back, it's black. When you do this, it's armor bright.
Armor bright, and that's the name
highest
of the
degree
finish.
of refinement. Yes, that's the name of the finish.
That's really excellent. Well, you know, there are people still making this stuff in America. This is a beautiful piece of work, and we're going to go visit one of the very best armor makers in the United States, Chris Pore.
Well, I got started as a hobby. I've always been interested in it, and it was one of those things. I wanted something and couldn't find it, so I made one for myself, and I enjoyed it. So I made another one, and here I am, making it for a living. Actually, I started when I was 5 or 6. My dad was a curator of a museum and an art historian, so when I was a little kid, I'd always see these things around, and I'd, you know, do a cardboard shield and a wooden sword, and it sort of escalated from there to, you know, wanting to do them out of metal. And I tried a few, you know, in your typical junior high school shop, and you make yourself that sword you're not supposed to make. And through college, I studied archaeology, and that was my field, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't want to teach. So when I got out of college, I had fortunately met a woman that was very supportive, and we were married, and she said, well, go for it, you know, give it a try, why not? When I'm going to do a new piece, if I can't see the original, I will get as much information on it as I can, a museum catalog or something. What I try to do is once a year, I go to Europe, and I know a few curators. So, you know, in London, I go to the Wallace Collection, or in Copenhagen, the Arsenal, or various museums around Europe. And they're generally very receptive. You know, I can pull something out of a case and measure it up and get all the details. And that's the best way. If you're really going to reproduce something, the best way is to get your hands on it and get all the little details down. And then when you make it, it's as close as you can do. And the whole point of the things that we're trying to do are to be as accurate as possible to the originals, whether it's armor or a sword or a mace or an axe. We want it to be almost indistinguishable from the real thing. For the armor, we try to be as accurate as possible. We're using the same basic techniques. We're using basically the same tools. We have a collection of hammers, of stakes, of anvils. Some of our tools are 150 years old. And we start out with flat sheet metal as opposed to a brick of iron, which the original armorers would have started with. But short of that, we try to be very accurate. We don't weld our seams. We don't do things out of pieces and sneak them together. We take single pieces of metal and form them until they're the proper shape. And honestly, it gives you a better armor. It's a more accurate copy, and ultimately it's stronger. A lot of the armor we make is simply decorative. People put it in their homes. We've done some things for museums, for their historical collections. But a significant amount of it gets used. We do things for theaters and movies and you know, people that are interested in historical reenactment. And they're on a horse pounding each other, and if it doesn't hold up, I'm going to get a phone call from somebody with a broken head wanting to know why it didn't work. So, a full suit of armor, assuming it's to be worn and used, can take anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months, and basically the amount of time depends purely on how fancy the armor is. If it's covered in fluting, it's going to take a lot more time than a simple rounded breastplate that's, you know, basically just a generic medium man. So, you know, like I say, you could do an armor in as little as 3 weeks or as much as 3 months. And of course, the price would be reflective of that, too. Everything is based on time. That would be basically me working for 3 weeks. I have a crew of about 6, 2 of which work on armor. If I have someone cut out the plates, maybe rough form everything, I could cut the time in half. Half the time on an armor is spent just roughing it out, and then the other half is spent putting in all the fine details, cleaning up the lines, getting it to fit just exactly. So we try to make sure that when someone wears one of our armors, they can turn a somersault in it. If it doesn't move, it's not properly fitted, it's not properly made. And of course, for our weapons, that's a different story. We try to be accurate in how they look. The end result is very accurate, but of course, in the Middle Ages, all iron and sword blades would have been forged out, and we are not doing that. We tend to take a billet of iron and we will cut out our shape, and we use a stock removal process for our blades. We will grind away the material. We do forge our tangs out. We have a short stubby tang, and we will draw that out to the appropriate length, but it's simply not economically feasible to forge out each and every blade. Some of them are 4.5 feet long, and we frankly sell hundreds of swords. And to hand forge every one of those would just not be economically possible. An armorer made armor. That's all they did. For weapons, a cutler would have fitted finished sword blades to his own hilts. But through most of the Middle Ages, in fact, as far back as the 9th century, blades were generally produced in blade centers. There was a big one in Germany, Passau had famous blades. Toledo, of course, made famous blades. They were shipped all over Europe, even in the 9th or 10th centuries. A lot of the Viking swords have German blades on them. And it was quite an industry, and it was a very specialized industry to make blades. So no one did all. Of course, there were always village blacksmiths that would turn out a sword, but the finer weapons were always done with imported blades. In the 15th century, there were two basic styles of armor. You had the Milanese armors, being the finest in that part of Europe, and of course Augsburg and Nuremberg in Germany. And those were the big production centers, and the German armors were very distinctive. They were called Gothic. They had long, spiky details and lots of fluting and highly decorated, whereas the Italian forms were simpler, rounder. They were exported all over the world. Basically, you had two styles of armor. You had the German and you had the Italian styles, and that was used throughout the 15th centuries. It was basically had the market cornered, and most people making armor were copying one of those two styles. This is Craig Johnson. He's my production manager, and the only other fellow here who's up to the good armor. What are you working on, Craig?
This is the middle part of a back plate, would be the central lane for that. This is the crease here that would be the center of it, and I'm planishing it out, which is the final process in making the piece of armor smooth before we start polishing it.
All right, so this will be the bottom half of this back plate then.
Yep, it will fit inside there.
Oh. All right.
Great. Now we've already shaped the point and begun to bevel down the sides, leaving a spine of thicker metal right down the middle. Now we're going to show you how to make a quillion, which is this cross piece that protects your hand from sliding up onto the blade.
And what Starfire has done, basically in our shapes of the quillions, is that we've taken the basic look of the Northern European sword. So this sword could appear anywhere from Spain to Ireland to, Norway, basically European blades.
With the quillion shape, the next step that we have to make is to pierce a hole in it so that we can slide the haft of the blade through it. And then you shape the quillion to the blade, heat it to a welding heat in a coal forge, and pound it together. Or you can arc weld the whole apparatus together, supporting the haft with an extra piece of metal to make it even stronger. But first you have to punch the hole in the quillion, and that's what we're going to show you how to do now.
Flip it. Flip it. So as you said, the important thing is to get the hole the right size so that the blade fits through it. And then once again, once the blade is on there, you can then heat it and shape the quillion to the blade itself.
To reach this point, we've had to go through several stages. First, we began to shape the point from this raw piece of bar stock, and then we refined the point even more, beveling down the edges and leaving a spine of strong material in the center. Finally, we formed the quillion here, and then pierced it so that the haft of the blade could fit through. Once you fit the haft through, you weld it together, and you can reinforce it with these other pieces in order to make it stronger, and you can add whatever sort of pommel you want. The final step is wrapping, and Robert's going to show us how you do that at Starfire.
During the Middle Ages, and throughout any period where swords were being used, the materials that were used was totally dependent upon the knight, or whoever's sword it happened to belong to. There are stories of the ladies of the knight cutting off locks of their hair so that the knights could use that to wrap as well. At Starfire, we simply use a nice, good suede leather wrapped around as such, basically. Suede being soft, and since we do make these swords to fight with, we want it to be, rather soft to the touch.
And also it gives you a
And it
surer
absorbs
grip.
the impact as well, yes. After we get the suede on, we then take braided copper wire, which is then basically put in. We insert it under the leather for a good grip.
Uh-huh.
This is basically wrapped around several times, just to hold the leather securely. And then the wire follows the suede on down the hilt.
Ah.
Once again, any material could be used. Some people prefer silk. Silk is being used, quite popular.
I've seen what appear to be embroidered hilts.
Oh, you can take leather, have it braided as such, nice artistically braided hilts.
And wooden handles even, some people have used.
Wood is good, as with everything. During the course of a sword's career, you can count on changing the hilt continually times because it wears out with wear, which is also one of the reasons that Starfire uses this nice, simple approach.
Because it has to be done so many times. Anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Greetings, good gentles, greetings one and all. My lords and ladies, we welcome ye to this tournament of knightly skills. By our command shall our noble knights meet here upon the field to settle once and for all the question of the Queen's honor. Sir Duncan Marshall, having accused the Queen of being unfit to wear the crown, has been challenged by Sir John of Orkney, who has sworn on his family's crest to vanquish this villain or die trying. Today's tournament shall consist of a series of knightly games designed to test a knight's ability on horseback and his skill with weapons. Our knights shall be expected to act with the utmost chivalry. The rules of these events, having been predetermined by the King, will be described before each event. Our knights shall, of course, be expected to act with honor and dignity. Any breaking of the rules shall be, of course, subject to the King's judgment. And now, my lords and ladies, without further delay, we shall call for our noble knights to assemble here upon this field of honor.
To obtain your personal copy of Alan Rogers' Forge and Anvil companion book, including project details and expanded videotapes of Forge and Anvil projects, send $15 for the book, $35 for tapes, or $39.95 for both. Call 1-800-359-4040 for credit card orders. Make checks payable to the University of Georgia and send them to Forge and Anvil, University of Georgia, Georgia Center, Athens, Georgia, 30602, 3603.
And once the wire is on to hold the leather, you have your sword.
All right, this is a beautiful piece of work, Robert.
Well, thank you.
You did a really nice job. I kind of like the way it feels.
It is a serviceable blade.
Yeah? But how does it work? That's the question.
Well, there is only one way, after all, to find out.
Ah, I hear ya. Tune in next time on Forge and Anvil and see how this comes out.